With your waste yarn, cast on and do 5 rounds. Take the tail of your waste yarn and put it in the middle of the machine. Make sure the white peg before the black one is looped around with that yarn. Take your main color and put a good amount into the middle so that you have yarn to do your cast off. Put this yarn into the feeder, and we're going to pay attention to the white peg and the black peg. We want to make sure the black peg picks up the new yarn and the white peg is not creating any gaps. We're going to do 28 rounds of the main color. Now, if I look over here already, I see that the yarn has not fully gone down under those hooks. That's totally fine. You can just push them down with your finger. So now we're going to do our 28 rounds. We're up to the part where now we're going to make the hole for the thumb. And we're going to do this by picking 3 stitches off the machine. The way we do this is we've stopped where we're at the point where the black peg is the next peg that's going to pull the yarn. So I'm paying attention actually to this pink notch next to the black peg. This is a very important peg, and I've used an expo marker to mark that one with some black. So I want this yarn to catch underneath this peg before the black one. So I'm going to very, very slowly begin cranking my machine, and I'm paying attention to this peg. Okay, now we see the yarn on the peg. We want to see it flip under. Okay, it's flipped under. And now we're going to begin working in reverse. One of the things we have to pay attention for when we're in reverse is stitches possibly coming off the machine. This is not a big deal. We can just put them back on with a loom pick. Stitches I'm paying attention to are stitch number 5 and stitch number 4. So this is stitch 1, 2, 3, 4. That one I'm paying attention to, and this one. And I already see something happening here where the stitch is starting to fall off. So start cranking the handle backwards. And we're looking to see if anything's going to come off. Okay, so already I see that stitch number 4 has come off. I'm going to take this loom pick, and it's very easy to catch it in the beginning like this, and I'm just going to put that back up and just push it down with the loom pick in the center between those pegs. Now I'm going to continue going backwards until I see stitch 1, 2, and 3 flat with the machine again. Here we go. And hold this loose yarn just to make sure it's not too loose. Okay, so stitch number 3 right here is down, and it looks like it's going to stay on the machine. Now I'm going backwards, and I'm going to pay attention to stitch number 2. Stitch number 2 is back down, and it has not come off the machine. Our last stitch is stitch 1 with the black peg. Let's continue going backwards. Stitch number 1 is down, and it has not fallen off the machine. Now I'm going to use actually the needle that this machine came with, because I feel like this is a very good needle for this specific thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to use this needle to pick these 3 stitches off. So I'm going to put the needle underneath the first stitch, the stitch with the black peg. And I know that this is the first stitch because I have my marker on the notch next to it. So I'm putting this needle underneath stitch 1, sliding and pulling it off the machine. Then slide up a bit with your needle and get into stitch number 2 and pull it off the machine. And then lastly, put it underneath stitch number 3. This is always going to be the tightest one, and pull it off. Slide these stitches into the middle of the needle and let go. Now that I've picked my 3 stitches off, I'm going to work flat rows 6 times. So 6 flat rows. And I'm going to make another mark for demonstration purposes so that we see on the other side which notch I'm going to be paying attention to. So I picked off stitches 1, 2, and 3. This is my last stitch, and so I need to pay attention to this notch. I'm going to use my expo marker and I'm going to put a green bit there so that we see it. So this is notch 1, and that's my last notch. So now I'm going to go in reverse to here, to the green one. It needs to catch under, and then I'm just going to go back and forth, flat like that. So now I'm going to start cranking in reverse. Really pay attention to your stitches on the edges because sometimes they like to pop off. So this is panel knitting 1. Do this very, very slowly. Okay, so now I'm at the peg right before the notch that I marked as green. This is an empty peg right here. So I need to get under the peg right before this empty peg, which was the 3rd stitch I took off. So this is the notch for stitch 4. So I'm going to continue going and just keep going. Now the yarn is resting on this peg, but I need to get it caught underneath. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Now it's caught under. And now I'm going to go back the other way. So here we go. And again, I'm paying attention to this peg right here. Keep going, keep going. I want to see that slide under. Now it's slid under. And this is great, but I'm going to give this yarn a little pull, not too much, just to secure that so that when I'm done, these stitches aren't too loose. I've completed row 1, and now I'm continuing on with row 2. So I'm going to just keep going until I get to that peg that I marked with the marker. Okay, so now I'm at the peg with the marker. And again, I want this yarn to catch under and flip under. So I'm going to keep going, keep going. Now it's at the halfway point. Keep going, keep going. It is now slipped under. And now I can go back in reverse. So here we go. I'm paying attention to this right here. I want to see it flip under. All right, it slipped under, but look how loose that is. I'm going to pull the working yarn just a little bit so it's more secure. So I've now completed rows 1 and 2, and now I'm on row 3. Okay, so now my green peg is approaching, and I'm going to keep going, and I want that yarn to get caught under it. Keep going. It's not there, it's not there, it's not there. it's flipped under. Now I'm going to go in reverse again. And this is going to get loose when you start going in reverse. So just make sure you hold it, not tightly, but a little securely. All right, here we go. I want to see that yarn flip under the green peg. All right, almost there. We're looking at that. Keep going. It's flipped under. It's a little loose, so I'm going to give this yarn a little pull. And this, now we're on row 4. And again, we're approaching this black peg, so we want this to catch under. Now it's hovering over it. Keep going, keep going. Let it catch under. It's flipped under. And now we're going to go back in reverse. And again, I am watching this very carefully to see that flip under. It's flipped under. I'm going to give this a little pull so this is tight. And I'm up to and now I'm up to row 5. Okay, we're approaching our green peg again. So I want to see that yarn flip under. It's flipped under, and now I'm going to go in reverse. I want to see it flip under again. It's flipped under. Give it a little pull, so now it's secure, and go back to the beginning. Okay, so now I'm approaching this black peg, and now I'm going to stop right as the black peg is facing up. To the point now where we're going to go back to working in the round. But the problem is I have these 3 empty hooks because those 3 stitches are on the needle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little piece of waste yarn and I'm going to create these kind of fake stitches. I'm going to take this small little piece of waste yarn. It could be the diameter of the machine. It could maybe a little longer. And I'm going to put a small part of this in front of the black peg. And I'm going to slide it all the way down to the base. Take the tail of that and just put it inside the hole. Then I'm going to put this yarn underneath the peg next to the black one and the next one. Start turning the machine very slowly until you see this 3rd peg start to rise. Very, very slowly. All right, this peg has now risen up. So I'm going to take this yarn and I'm going to just make sure that that white peg can catch it. And then the tail of that is put into the middle of the machine. All right, so now that little bit of waste yarn has been caught. I'm going to do 10 rounds now and proceed as regular as if this weren't here at all. So this is the middle of round 1. Okay, so I've done my 10 round. Cut a decent amount of tail, because again, we need to be able to bind this off. And now you're going to take this out of the yarn feeder and put it into the middle of the machine. Make sure the white peg before the black has the yarn caught around it. We're going to now take some waste yarn and we're going to do 5 rounds of waste yarn. So again, a tail, put it inside the middle, hook it into the yarn feeder. We're paying attention to the white and black pegs just to see that everything is caught. It is. I'm just going to push this down to make sure nothing is stuck on the notches, and we're going to do 5 rounds. We're going to release that, put it in the middle, and I'm going to do 1 round with no yarn caught at all. Okay, and now I'm going to do another round with no yarn at all, and the whole thing is going to pop off the machine. Take your work out of the machine, put the machine aside. And this is what we're working with now. Give this a nice pull so that you see the stitches snap into place. Pull the top green tail, or mine is green, out of the middle so that it's at the top. And we have the bottom here. Okay, so now what are we looking at? We have a tail for our waste yarn and a tail of our working yarn on both ends. We have the waste yarn that is holding 4 stitches there, and we have 3 stitches on this needle still. First, what we're going to do is we're going to bind off these edges so we don't have any raw stitches. I'm going to begin with the top of the piece. For the top of the piece, I am using a crochet hook that is a 3.5 millimeter. I want to use a slightly small crochet hook for the top because I want it to look really nice against my hand. For the cuff, however, I am going to use a 4.5 millimeter hook because we want the cuff to be really loose. So let's begin with the top. So I have my 3.5 millimeter hook. Pick up the piece and find the tail of your working yarn. What we're going to do is I'm going to work clockwise. So I'm going to look for the working stitches of my color yarn. When you see the tail for the waste yarn, just ignore it. And I'm going to do slip stitches all the way around. Make sure you do these slip stitches very loosely because even though I'm using a smaller crochet hook, I need to make sure that they're loose because that stitch doesn't have any actual stretch to it, and I want to be able to get my hand through. So I'm just going through the 2 loops of my color yarn, ignoring the beige or whatever color your waste yarn is, putting them both on the crochet hook, yarning over and sliding it through all 3. Okay, so now I'm at my last stitch. I'm just going to do a slip stitch. So this is the first slip stitch that I did. I'm going to just slide my crochet hook under there, yarn over, and pull it through both loops. Make a little loop like that, pull this through, and I'm going to tie a knot for security. Okay, give it a tug just so that you're sure that it's good, and cut a tail around 5 or 6 inches long. I will weave that in later. Now I'm going to find the top of my waist yarn and I'm going to remove it. So this is the tail of the top of my waist yarn, and I'm just going to start pulling this out. When you're removing waist yarn, just never really yank. You want to keep it delicate just so that you don't damage anything. Okay, give this another pull just to make sure those end stitches got yanked out nicely. And there is the top half of the glove. And that's what it looks like so far. I really like how the colors worked out. It's really pretty. Now we're going to do the same thing to the bottom. For the bottom, I'm using my larger hook. I'm using my 4.5 millimeter hook. So again, I'm going to work clockwise, and I found the tail of my working yarn, not the waist yarn. I'm ignoring this, my working yarn, which is the red, and I am going to attach the hook to it. So I'm just going in there and pull up a loop. And again, I'm going to look for those sets of 2 stitches that are stacked on top of each other, and I'm going to work slip stitches all the way around very, very, very loosely. And again, I'm at the end of my round. I'm going to ignore this, and I'm going to find the first real stitch that I did, insert the crochet hook, yarn over, and slide it through both. And for this, I'm just going to pull the tail through the loop. I'm not going to tie a knot. Okay, so again, give it a tug and try it on and see what you think. Now we need to remove the waist yarn from the bottom part of the glove. The bottom half is always a little harder to remove, but it's not terribly difficult. I like to reuse my waist yarn, so I'm not going to cut it off. You can cut it off if you want. You just go around, but just be very careful that you don't cut your good stitches. So I'm going to find the loose tail, the bottommost tail, not the one that's in 5 rows in. I'm going to find this bottommost tail, and I'm just going to start pulling it out of the first round of loops. You only have to do this once. If you can't figure out which loops are pulling it out, if you just pull at a few different loops along the way, you'll see the one that starts pulling the tail out. So now I've removed it completely, that first anchoring set of stitches, and now all I have to do is start pulling, and they're all going to just unravel right off. Just be careful at the end that you don't pull too tightly so that you don't misshape anything. And I pull out also from the opposite end as well. So now I've removed both ends of the waist yarn, and I have 2 tails now remaining. Now I'm going to focus on the thumb hole area. So again, let's see what we're working with. We have 4 stitches wrapped around the waist yarn, and I have 3 stitches attached to this needle. I'm going to use the 3.5 millimeter crochet hook again, and I'm going to take from the skein my original color. So using my 3.5 millimeter crochet hook, I am going to start a couple of stitches after these 3 picked up stitches. Now, if you only go into the very first stitch all the way around, you're going to have holes. So what you need to do is go a couple of stitches in. So here, I don't know if you can, here I have 3 loops on my hook. Get a long bit of tail, loop that onto your crochet hook, slide it through, chain 1, and then do a single crochet into that same spot. Just be careful not to lose your 3 stitches. So I've done 1 single crochet, and now I'm going to go all the way around the whole circumference. I'm going to do my single crochets on top of this tail just so that I have one less thing to weave in. So again, I'm not going to go just into that stitch. I'm going to go 1 further in and do a single crochet all the way around. Now here I have kind of a stretched stitch, this beige stitch, so I'm going to go 3 down, 3 loops down, just so that that looks tighter. This part of it you just kind of have to eyeball. There's no really right or wrong way to do it. See, that created a hole, so I don't like how I did that stitch. So I'm going to go further back. At this point, I'm going to let go of this tail because I think I've woven it in enough that I don't need to do anymore. Now I'm at the point where I have this waist yarn. So I'm going to do stitches into where the waist yarn is located. I'm not even going to take the waist yarn out until the end. And as you go, if you start putting in a stitch and you feel like it's creating a hole, you just take it out and put the hook into a different spot. A lot of this is just eyeing it and figuring it out as you go along. There's no one set way. It's all just based on how it looks. I'm just checking on my needle here. I didn't lose my stitches. You just want to check that from time to time in case they start to slide off. See, that created a hole. I don't like that. I'm going to take it out and I'm going to go back one more. Okay, and now we're at the area where the needle is. I'm going to insert my hook into the top part of one of those stitches and do a single crochet. I'm not even going to take the needle out. Actually, now I'm going to just slide this off. Thankfully it's stretchy, so I'm able to just get it off. I'm going to do the same for the next two. Okay, I'm going to slide this out. And I'm almost at the end. And now I'm going to find my first real stitch, put the hook in, and do a slip stitch. Okay. Cut around 5 inches, and I'm going to tie a knot by pulling this through and then looping it again and pull. Okay. Give it a pull, the whole thing. You can remove this. You might have to cut this out because I did. Oh, it came right out. Okay. Now I'm going to take my yarn needle, and I like using a metal one because it slips through very easily. I'm going to weave in the ends on the top. I'm just going to start weaving through some of these inside stitches. If you just go back and forth and just check occasionally on the front that you're not weaving on the front by accident. Just go back and forth. They won't really go anywhere after that. And don't pull too tight though, because then you'll get pinching and puckering. Okay, I'm going to check the front. Looks good. And keep going. Okay. And then I'm just going to kind of slide it down a little long. And I think I'm going to cut. Okay, so there is the top part of the glove completely done. And it looks really nice. I'm going to do the same for the thumb hole. Now this end I already wove in, so this I can just trim. And again, I'm going to take my yarn needle and I'm just going to slide into these single crochets. It's actually very easy to weave in ends on single crochets. So go through around 5, back step 1, just so that they can't slide out, and then do a few more. Okay, so now I'm going to trim this as well. Give it a little pull. And pull on this so everything snaps into place. And I'm going to put this on so you see what it looks like. It's done. I think it came out really nice. I love the color changes. And even though there was a big beige section here in my variegated yarn, there are nuances in the color which make me a little happy to see. Okay, you can stop here if you want, and you can just have this simple edge. I think it looks really nice. I have my tail here. You can weave this in the same way you did with the other ones. Or you could put the scalloped edge like I had in the sample, and I'll show you how to do that right now. I have this very long tail here, and you can rejoin however you want. I'm going to do something called a Russian join, and that connects these two tails together so that I just have one less thing that I have to weave in later on. So you're going to take the yarn that's still attached to the skein and the tail that's attached to the glove, and you're going to tie 2 knots. One on one side, and then I'm also going to tie a knot on the side with the tail. I'm not really going into detail about how to do this because you really can join however you want. And I'm not going to really show a lot of detail about how to do this just because there's so many ways to join. Okay, so that connected those, and I can cut these 2 tails very close to the knot, but don't cut the knot. Okay, so now my yarn is connected, and once I do the shells, you're not going to see it at all. So I'm going to take my 4.5 millimeter crochet hook. I'm going to again work clockwise. I'm going to insert the hook into the stitch where the yarn is sticking out, and I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And in that same spot, I'm going to do 4 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4. Skip 1 stitch, and in the next stitch do a single crochet. My Russian knot is coming up, so I'm just going to let that figure out where it wants to be. Now it's right in front, which always ends up happening, but you can kind of just poke it through. I'll poke it through when it's a little bigger. And now I've done my single crochet. I'm going to skip a stitch, and I'm going to do 5 double crochet into the next one. So I'm skipping, going into the next one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Skip the next stitch, single crochet into the next one. Skip this stitch, 5 double crochet into the next. Again, skip 1 single crochet, skip 1, 5 double crochet, skip 1 single crochet into the next, skip 1, 5 double crochet into the next, we're almost there, skip 1 single crochet into the next, skip 1, 5 double crochet into the next. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing and give me a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. Now, because the machine is a 22 pin, we have to do a little fudging over here. So I'm going to skip 1, I'm going to do a single crochet, and I don't have that 1 extra stitch to create the space, but it's not even noticeable. And so I'm going to just go back into that original stitch and do a slip stitch. Cut a tail, and again, put a knot, tighten it, and that's what we have. And because this yarn had so many different color changes, I love that it repeated back again at the bottom. So there's our shell stitch all the way around. I'm going to take the yarn needle and I'm going to just sew in these ends. And there it is, completely done. The fingerless glove with the optional shell stitch. And I'll show you what it looks like on. There it is. I think it came out really nice. I love this yarn, it's beautiful. This can also be done on the Addi Express. It's the same number of pins. And that's that. I hope you make it. And if you do make it, please let me know. Bye-bye.